No longer content to continue beating the Pope in England, Clemens decides to start pushing towards the conquest of Italy in hopes of one day dismantling the papacy. And in 1063, after the siege of Tortona, Count Ubaldo would surrender his lands. Whilst working on expanding those holdings, Clemens would drink himself to death. Inheriting the war for Tortoli from his father, Saul had little time to ease into the burdens of the crown, but was quickly successful there. The Pali line's continued success led them to the creation of a second family branch. Saul's fifth son would be born in 1067 and was named Leo. With an eye towards continuing his father's work in Italy, Saul would send troops raiding in Eastern Europe to help fill the treasury. The coffers once again full, in 1069 Saul would launch the invasion of Venice. As the troops were gathering in North Italy, Saul would learn of King Aethelsige's taste for long pork. Saul would use this secret to keep the English king in line. Venice managed to sneak their military out of the city before the squad troops could arrive and laid siege to Modena. The sieges of minor Venetian holdings were called off to go relieve Modena and won a resounding victory. In response, Venice would hire a sizable band of mercenaries who would almost win a battle of Carol, but squad reinforcements would arrive just in the nick of time to save the day, and capture the serene Doge of Venice, who was promptly forced to sign a peace treaty. Turning his attention back to Sardinia, Saul sends dual declarations of war to claim the remaining regions of the island. Both campaigns would resolve quickly and positively for the empire. The Aussies had subverted Anjou away from the Hoodle branch and were still in control of Burgundy. The Waxu line has contented themselves for decades now to quietly rule in Champagne. The Pali branch has also been content in Flanders, though they have added English territories to their borders, as well as lands in Holland by the newly created second branch. Despite the loss of Anjou, the Hoodles remain strong, ruling in Poitiers. The Dobsiniums continue to dominate France, holding the kingdom as well as multiple duchies. Though they had lost the Welsh crown, the Doreen family continues to do well in Britannia. Ascleton still holds the lands granted to him by Clemens after the family lost the throne of England. After adding a former Venetian county, Emperor Saul turned his attention to Sicily, and first battle would be joined at Messina, where poor planning on the landing would give victory to the defenders. The rematch would take place at Sarquassa, where the squad would take their revenge. Unbeknown to the southern troops, while they were marching to battle, another battle would be taking place at Calatafirmi, devastating the siege forces. The bulk of the troops would arrive too late to help and would instead suffer further loss. The scattered troops would gather in the south of Italy and begin the long march back to the war front. The troops would stop their march in Calabria to lay siege to the allies of the Sicilians. But before meaningful progress could be made, word would come of a rising Catholic rebellion. Hoping to finish the Sicilian campaign first, Saul would lead his troops back to once again siege the capital and win a victory at Belarm. After this successful siege, word would come of the formation of the Noctum branch of the FoddSquad by the Duchess Harleve. Right when victory began to look in sight, word would come that King Walter of Aquitaine, the Aussie branch, Doreen branch, and King Chewy would all join the Catholics and rise up in a rebellion of their own. Unwilling to accept victory in Sicily at the cost of the unity of the empire, Saul would pack up his bag and take the troops home to quell rebellions. As the troops were sailing home, ally Queen Maria was kind enough to capture the leader of the Catholic rebels, and suddenly, Saul once again only had one enemy in front of his face. The troops would land and directly lay siege to the city of Barcelona, hoping to cut the rebellion off at the head. Despite taking King Walter's wife prisoner during the siege, the rebels would not be dissuaded, so the troops headed to Burgundy to see if the Aussie line would be more easily coerced. The siege of Arles also wouldn't prove enough to end the hostilities, and the troops were sent to Milan to see if Chewy could be convinced to make peace. But with the coffers draining and the rebels having a seemingly endless supply of troops of their own, Saul pushed for a truce that would end the current hostilities, but not bring about an end to the tensions. In 1078, Saul would take a further chunk out of Italy and add the Duchy of Romagna to the empire, which he would pass on to his son Gus. That fall, Saul would introduce a new member to the royal court, a cat named Paws. And the next spring would also add the Duchy of Ancon to the realm, which he would pass to his son Leo. In 1082, while working on conquering Spoleto, Saul would receive word that once again the Catholics intended to crusade against England. And right after a massive horde of Muslims would march into the Barcelona region. Things would continue to go poorly for Saul this year, with the Welsh Catholics seeing opportunity and rising up in rebellion. Discretion being the better part of valor, Saul would abandon the campaign for Spoleto to focus on the Muslim invasion. As the troops were arriving on the Spanish coast, word would come that the Catholics were setting sail for England. Weighing the value of England versus Barcelona, Sol quickly decided to surrender Barcelona to the invaders, thus becoming the first ruler of the squad to cede land in a war. Most of the troops would be immediately redirected to England to prepare for the crusade, but one army was sent to Germanic territories to hunt down the leader of the latest Catholic uprising. These troops would win a victory at Sundaga, where the leader was reported to be, but were unable to capture him. But before the rebellion could be quelled, or the crusade even properly started, Sol would fall sick and die at 71. Explosive Seal, who'd spent his life away from court as a mercenary, was recalled to take his rightful place ruling the empire. Can he lead the recovery from the missteps of Sol's reign? Find out next time.